Hi guys, it's Bunny from Green Bunny Hats, and today I'm going to show you guys how to use some of this stuff at home. So I know everybody's kind of stuck at home and we want to all learn stuff, so we're doing some at-home hat making the easy way, or at least hopefully the easy way for you. It used to be way back when that ladies could make their hats at home and guys could make their hats at home, so let's have some fun. I have some stuff to show you first, and I'm not really big on being on camera, so we're going to show more stuff than me. Nobody wants to look at me, so. Back here, we've got some beginner things that would be really good to get. This book right here, From the Neck Up. This is the best book I've found so far, especially for beginners. It's got a lot of really good things explaining your materials and hats from over the centuries and putting things together with different sewing techniques, cutting, everything like that. So there are a couple places online you can get this. Right now on Amazon it's $1 bazillion for some reason. There are other places that are used bookstores that you get a binded version of this like this for pretty cheap. So highly recommend this. And over here we have a lot of materials that are good to have. This brush is for brushing off any loose materials and loose fibers off of all of your hats. It has a hard side and a soft side. You can actually get this at a beauty supply store. It's boar hair and very useful. This also, again, for getting rid of loose fibers and things like that on all of your surfaces that are cloth. You know, goes one way, takes it off, and then you go this way and you can actually get the stuff off of that. You need your paintbrush. I like the rotary tools for cutting off any excess fabric off of the brims and things like that. This would be pretty easy to do instead of getting, you know, highly complicated contraptions. Good fabric scissors, very fine grit sandpaper. This glue is the glue that I recommend. Please, for the love of all that's holy, do not use hot glue on your hats. It's not long term. Things do fall off. It's just generally a little messy. If you need to glue anything, go ahead and use this. Just an FYI, it does have a type of acetone in it, so if you have any nail polish on, it will actually strip it right off. Yay! Do fabric tests before you use it. There are other water-soluble adhesives that are good to use. Actually, I grabbed that one out. One sec. This is not bad either. Get it at Hobby Lobby or somewhere else. It's non-toxic. It glues things together, just as long as it won't be getting wet, because it doesn't bond if it gets really moist, because obviously it's water-based, so it's water-soluble. You have your shellac. You can also get something called sizer. Both of them I recommend getting a respirator to use. Even if you do it outside, you need some kind of protection, because when it's aerosolized, it's really toxic. This is a little less toxic than the sizer when it's aerosolized, but still it's nothing you want to breathe in. It's not good for you. It's completely non-toxic after it dries. This is why I really like this a lot. Again, do fabric tests before you use it on anything white especially, so it's going to have a lot of bleed through or anything like that. So it comes in spray bottles, and you can also get it in small cans. So if you need to use a lot more, just use a paintbrush and paint it on. After everything dries is when you actually sand it. I'll be showing you that later. So, two different types of felt that you can use is wool felt and fur felt. Wool felt is a lot less expensive. You could probably get something like a cape line or capeline like this for about $15 or so depending on where you're shopping. The fur felt is usually rabbit fur, and they don't kill the rabbits. They're not actually skinning them, they're just brushing them for their fur. So if you're worried about cruelty to animals, don't worry about that. They take really good care of the rabbits. If you want to find locally sourced places that have lots of really fun and wonderful Angoras running around, you can buy directly from them, and sometimes they have full cape lines and hoods for you to use. Sometimes you can do wet felting, but that's a different day entirely. This is a lot higher grade than the wool is. It won't come apart as much. You can sand it nicely to a nice shiny finish. It's a lot cleaner look, but if you're starting out, then just start with wool. It's cheaper, and you could do basically all the same stuff. It's just not cleaner. Like, you just have a lot of pilling that happens. You can see all the little spiky bits. If you try to sand this down, it just, as you can see, it just starts getting more and more fuzzy. You can also spray it a little bit with a shellac, and it'll help a little bit with smoothing it down, but it's just, we won't get as much clean look without using fur felt. There are other ways of making hats, so you can actually go and buy patterns. Any pattern that I've ever used, I've completely modified, just because they're just, the patterns are more for like, hey, if you know how to sew, you can do millinery, but if you do millinery and then try to do it just straightforward with like dressmaking ways, it's a little different, if that makes any sense. So basically, the way I would make a hat is not exactly how somebody who just straightforward sews would make a hat, and a different way of putting it together or using a lot of the patterns. So I modify everything. Pardon me for rambling on. But these are actually good if you want to start out. They're a buckram core, which is a really nice heavy material. We can see it over this way. This is hard on your sewing machines. There are different weights and types. You can actually get them. They have glue inside of them. Some of them you buy for like curtain making and whatnot. There's also stuff that's like buckram-like, that is very, very thin, that you can actually run through sewing machines and it won't give you too much of a problem. Alright, let's start with the fun part. So I am actually using the fur felt. There are a couple of recommendations of places to get your fur felt and wool felt, and I will leave them in the below section, I guess, for you guys to be able to purchase. There are a couple places that are currently open right now, even though we have their kerfuffle, so you can get some of your supplies. So right now, I'm just spraying the inside to wet this down. I would say use distilled water, or at least filtered. Just definitely make sure it's filtered regardless of anything, because you'll start getting gross kind of like stained puddles on it if it's not completely filtered or distilled. So I have my industrial steamer. If you want to do this at home and you need steam, don't use one of the fabric steamers that you have like for just steaming out your shirts and things like that. It doesn't get hot enough. Your tea kettle will actually get nice and hot for you to be able to do this. So a combination of steam and iron. This is my super duper industrial, gets oh my god hot, you might burn yourself iron. You can just use a regular straightforward iron. So I have my wig head here. You can get these online for pretty cheap. But if you do not have that option, one of the styrofoam heads, you could just put several layers of tinfoil on it and use that. I am not going to be using this because it wiggles a little bit too much for me and I burn myself very easily because I'm klutzy. So we're going to put him aside. So just be very careful because they do wiggle a lot. If you're going to be doing it, just make sure you get a nice firm hold down here so you don't burn yourself. We don't want accidents in hat making, please. So this is nice and hot. So since the steam is very, very hot, just make sure you keep things moving because it's going to get nice and hot on your fingers. So if you're doing this over your oven, just, stand back a little far from your oven and get it in the steam there. You'll start to feel it getting nice and hot and very pliable. Like you can actually feel the difference in the stiffness. So we are nice and hot. Ooh-wah. Boop. So this is free-forming. So you just start taking it and just pinching it and moving it in different ways. So you can make different shapes. See that? You just keep moving it. This is messy. You can see all the furs on my hands. So we have a bit of a top. I'm going to fold some of this under. Make nice crisp lines here. It starts to get cool and it's sliding. Just heat it up again. And actually stop this right now. So once you get it to a place you really want it, damp washcloth. Be careful. See, it's like nice and crispy right there. Got a nice, really pretty fold. You can also hand felt if it's nice and hot enough. Freeform the felt without actually using the iron to crease it. So if you want to make slightly softer lines, just keep making sure it's nice and hot. You see the steam coming off of that. And just keep pinching it in place. You see we're making a really neat design here. Tuck under. Again, start to feel that it's getting a little dry. You can either take your iron to it and just go back under the steam. So to make these lines a little crisper. Just make sure this is damp, because you'll burn it otherwise. Press down. Just remember, if you're doing this with a styrofoam head, it is styrofoam underneath, so you don't want to leave the iron on for extended periods of time, because your styrofoam will probably start to heat up and melt. So if you really, really want to be careful, I recommend just kind of draping it with a towel underneath. That'll actually help a little bit with the head shape too, because they're kind of small. They're smaller than human heads, unless you get a really teeny tiny head. So I'd say just drape it with a towel so you don't have to really worry about melting your styrofoam. You can see it's starting to take shape. Now when you add steam and heat to fur felt and wool felt especially, has a bit of a shrink factor. So you're kind of pulling on this and asking it to expand and pull apart the fibers. The fibers want to go back to where they were before. So you're going to have to pin this in place. As you can see, it's just starting to, it wants to move around and not stay put. But these are not the pins I want to use, so I'm going to grab the pins. That's it. So I'm going to start pinning it in place. If you want to get a little bit more creative with something similar to hat blocks, I'll be showing you something called hat shapers in a minute. So if you actually want to pull your form over top of something, you can get them for pretty cheap. I think they sell for about $25 to $30 or so. Pin you there. You can see, find an interesting shape. You can even take this and just plop it down and make a fedora shape and add a brim to it. You can add a brim to this if you want to. It's a fun place to start. Just be creative, have fun. Okay, and next I can show you one of the hat shapers. Okay, more wet, more steam. So this is my cape line or cape lean. This is the wool that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to get you nice and wet. So a lot of this stuff's pre-treated. As you can see, it's not really soaking it up as much as I want it to. It helps it stay color fast. So it just takes a little bit of moisture and a little bit of steam to get it to absorb it. Get in there. So, well, this is steaming up. So the pins I talked about earlier, these guys, they're just straightforward pins that you get for any type of sewing or dressmaking or anything like that. Nothing special. So this guy right here, you can get at a place called hatshapers.com. These are mostly made for wet felting. So basically you make your felt yourself and you just kind of form it around it. They work pretty well for not having hat blocks. Let me show you just a really quick and easy way to use it. Like really easy. So we got our form. Just plop right over top. And we're going to squeeze it down. And keep going. This takes a little bit of upper body strength to just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and get them down. Smooth it out. Keep smoothing. To get that nice dome shape. See, it's another reason why I have difficulty with wool. It likes to pickle. So I've been asked about like other synthetic fibers to make instead of using like wool or furs and things like that. Anything that has polyester in it or synthetic fibers, you can't steam it and stretch it. You can sew it, but like it does, like you see this slight puckering right here, it will never not do that, and then it starts to pucker, and it won't have any smooth surface to it once you add the heat and try to pull on it. So it's not recommended that you use any type of fabrics that are synthetic for trying to do this. It does not work out, trust me. I've tried. You'll be very frustrated by the end of it. If you want to just sew it together, that is a different story. Alright, so we've got our dome. You're going to stay put right there. So you can use one of two things. Use string, go around it a couple of times and just push it down, or the easy way, with elastics. So just take an elastic. See if we can get this over twice. Probably not. No, come back. Why'd you do that? Fun times. Okay, these guys are a lot stronger. Stronger than I thought I was. So just tuck it down. That'll actually hold it in place pretty good. So you see down here, it's just holding it put. You let this dry for one day. And after you let it dry for one day, you're going to be spraying the inside with your shellac. Stop puckering. So I'd say just definitely, this keeps happening. Just keep adding a lot more steam and keep pulling and pulling. But I'll be here for 20 minutes just trying to get this perfect, so I will spare you that. So just keep steaming and keep pulling, and I'll get a nice flat dome surface. Okay, we are back with our bowlerish hat. I got the pucker out. One fun thing you can actually do with this after it's all nice and dry is add a little bit more steam to it. You can even just like do a little karate chop down the center and, you know, pull in the sides and just have fun. Like there's no rules to head making necessarily. So I have my brush. You can see all of this loose particle stuff going on. So I'm gonna brush this off before it gets all dry. Use the rough side. This is one thing that you'll have to worry about with this. Is, let's see. One thing that is nice though about the wool is it has texture. So if you're looking for texture, that's what you got. So after this is all done and you've added your shellac to the inside of it, you can cut your brim to where you want it. And you add a wire to the brim to add some stiffness. Unless you want a floppy hat, because I mean, hey, you can totally do a floppy hat too if you want. I'm gonna put him aside. And this is a hat that is ready for its trimmings. So as you can see, I have wire, and it's just looped over and sewn in. And there are millinery contraptions you can get that actually crimp both of these ends together, and it's nice and seamless. But if you don't have that, this is another way you can do it, and just pinch them nice and tight closed. This is all around. This will actually allow it to retain some kind of shape. So we have over here, we have our Petersham, and I always say this wrong anytime I say it, the gross grain, and I know that's not how you really say it. So if you just look up Petersham online, you'll get different types. You don't want no highly synthetic things. You want a nice amount of cotton. If you have too much synthetics, which you have your high heat, it'll start to melt. And you can kind of see like how this acts and how shiny it is, as opposed to this, which has a lot more cotton in it. Do you see how it's just bending like this? Really nice. And this just wants to kind of do a weird crumple. You don't want this. This you could probably use for maybe like around the hat. It's not going to give you nice lines when you try and actually iron it. It wants to stay completely straight. So I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. So there is a place that I actually do buy this offline. They're relatively inexpensive. So you're going to want to fold it in two. You don't want it to be completely even. So you can see, I'm not sure if you can see since it's pretty dark, that I don't have a complete overlap here. So you want one over, one under. Okay. And I'm going to iron it. And as I iron it, I'm going to go kind of in a circle. So I'm going to fold it. Just keep going. So you can see it actually retains the circular shape I want to give it. So let me show you. Hope I don't melt this. This is the synthetic stuff. Try and iron it without melting things. This you can use maybe for a hat band, but like, so you can see it has a little bit of the shape here, but it's, do you see how it slides? It's not really quite holding it, and it's just, this is all burnt now. So I could use it on a lower setting, but then again, it won't try and curve for me. So it kind of pickles in a weird way. I know I keep using that fun word. Not as much cotton as we want in that one, but look how beautifully this gives us that nice curve. I'm going to show you sewing the this around the hat in a minute. I'm not going to do the whole thing because you'll be sitting there watching me for an extended period of time. I'm going to sew a little bit for you just so you can see it go around on just a regular sewing machine, and then we'll go outside and I'll show you sanding down one of the hats. Okay, so we're going to run this through our sewing machine. If it makes you feel a lot more comfortable, you can actually hand tack this around the entire thing. It will keep it from sliding, and you'll actually make sure that it's like in the right place over under. I'm usually pretty good. Hopefully this won't make a liar out of me. Not tacking it down and keeping it where it needs to be. As you can see, we're in the very back of the hat. This is where you want to start. Don't worry if you make a mistake, everyone does. I've actually sewn these backwards a couple of times by accident. Don't know what I was thinking. You know, everybody has those days. So we want to get it almost right on the line where we have our nice little scallops. And as you can tell, this is not a millinery sewing machine. This is just straightforward, so we'll be using something similar. This is pretty industrial, but I mean, most sewing machines are pretty good for this. I'd run some heavy fabrics through your sewing machine first to make sure that they can actually take something as heavy as this without breaking. Also, make sure you stay way away from this wire. As you have a wire here, if it gets anywhere near your needle, it's going to jump, hit this, and snap. I've done that lots of fun times. So, this is pretty, like I said, pretty industrial. It's meant to handle really, really heavy fabrics. Do a test run on your sewing machine to see if it's not going to bog down with something this heavy. So I'm just going to do a small patch as it goes around. Just make sure it's slid nicely snug right there. Get out of the way. Okay. As you can see, it is nice on that line. Let's see if this is going to call me a liar if I flip this over and it's in a nice spot on the underside, or if I totally missed it. Ah, see, look, it calls me a liar. So, in this case, I would take out the dreaded seam ripper, and anyone who sews knows this. So since this called me a liar, I'd say go back and just tack this down. I actually usually use a zipper foot. This is the first time I've used this, but my zipper foot got badly bent, so I didn't want to actually run this through here because my needle comes down and actually snaps. So I'm using a new foot, so I'm a little not used to that. So now I'm all slid, but you do get the point. So since it called me a liar, like I said, just tack this down first. So just a couple like just hand stitch, hand stitch, hand stitch all the way around, and then you won't worry about it sliding. Let me show you what's next. So follow me outside, please. Hello. So as you can see, I am wearing a mask. Hopefully you can hear me. Always do this part outside. It makes a gigantic mess, and also the reason I'm wearing a mask is because I don't want to blow my nose later and have Technicolor boogers. So as you can see, this is a different hat. This is one I've been working on, and it's already been stiffened. You see it's got a nice fold in the shape. The brim's already been cut, and I've got my 150 grit sandpaper. And what I want to do is smooth all of these fibers out. So I'll fold this up. This is very time consuming and very messy. So apron, mask, outside. We're on the porch right now. I would normally be outside on the patio, but we didn't have good light. So get a good hold of your hat. You do this on a flat surface, or you just hold it up and see it's getting my fibers. You can see it's getting rid of the more loose fibers. And it's started to make it a little shiny right there. This also, if you wanted to actually spray the outside of it with the shellac, make sure you smooth it down with your paintbrush first. It seeps into the fibers, and it'll actually make it somewhat waterproof. Not completely, just semi-waterproof. And doing this helps it get nice and smooth. Just want to go all the way around nice and even. See, there's like a lot of loose fibers. Now you have things like beaver that just get immediately beautifully smooth. This is rabbit. So again, the higher grade the material that you're using underneath, the better this result. You see how beautiful that looks right underneath there? Nice and shiny. So, the really beautiful boar brush that I showed you earlier, that's where this really comes in handy. I did not bring it outside because I'm me. So you'll just keep doing that until it's the nice smoothness that you desire. I'll just try to clean that off right there so you can see just how nice that looks right there. How gorgeous that is, and the fibers are knotted more together and they're not so loose. Okay, now we're back to wool. Again, this is a different hat. This is a mostly finished hat. I wanted you to see, you know, what it looks like with our brim and trimmings around hat band and our sweatband and everything. There's no written rule to how this should look. You don't even have to do this. You could leave it raw. You could curl up the edges. You could leave them flat. You could completely leave your hat band off if you wanted to. I do recommend making sure that this is an unfinished one, but putting a sweatband in the inside, it absorbs sweat and it'll keep it from getting sticky and gross and nasty. I usually do mine out of cloth since we are in Florida. So to experiment with the, you know, the insides and just experiment with the whole hat. Have fun, you know, there's no written rule on how these should look. Just, you know, learn more, do more, and give it a try. Okay, well, hopefully that was somewhat informative and somewhat helpful. This is my first time doing an informative slash tutorial slash whatever you want to call it video. So if there's anything else that you feel like I've missed, or anything you want me to expand on, or some different hat techniques you'd like me to show you, just let me know in the comments. Until then, bye!